Hey, everybody, welcome to Town Hall. This is going to be a near weekly event. I've done this at other places. It's an opportunity for folks to hear a little bit about what's going on in the university, a chance for us to share great work that faculty and students are doing, and a chance for folks to answer questions. So the Q&A should be open. You can put questions in. You can use your name or not. Um, and I'll go over that more as people join. I know people are just coming in. So small talk, this is the time. I was in Michigan for Thanksgiving. So Joe, Andrew, did you guys get out of Dodge for Thanksgiving?
Little bit. I have a lot of family on the in the southwest suburbs, so we came down for a little family get together. I have a pretty big family, so it's only like half of us, so only like 15 people.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, it was great.
Joe?
Yeah, my family's in Miami. I didn't go back for Thanksgiving. I spent Thanksgiving with Andrew's family.
Oh,
We're pretty close, and yeah, it was nice.
well, that's a
And
great thing.
Chicago.
That's a great thing. Jim, did you get anywhere or was this a homeward?
Homeward for me. I was fortunate enough to host our family here and you know, uh, grandparents and extended family. It was terrific. So,
Oh, great. So we seem to have a bit of a plateau for people joining. So just for those of you who maybe I didn't get a chance in the introduction, this is a town hall that I plan to do nearly every week. Obviously, there are some weeks, like at the end of this month, that we're not going to make use of, but it's an opportunity to share what's going on with the university and what our students and faculty are doing, and a chance for you to ask questions during it. So I start off with just a little bit of news, and I'm going to give my job talk more quickly than maybe I did for the actual board of trustees. But just in the news, I mean, we do have a board of trustees meeting next week, so we have a whole series of committee meetings this week. We're going to be talking about early start with the board, which we have a whole group of our programs that moved up their start date to before July 1st. This is a big deal for a couple of reasons. One, it helps de-intensify sometimes that first bit of a program. We hope that that helps our students, especially students maybe from a non-traditional background or have been away from school for a while. It just decompresses some of that first bit. It also provides additional financial flexibility for students borrowing in the wake of the reconciliation bill from July. And lots of institutions thought about doing this. I'm just so impressed with the people of Rosalind Franklin University for actually pulling it off. I don't know how many of you realize just how special and rare that is. So it required our folks to see where the puck was going back at the start of the year, and staff, faculty had to be so flexible and do a whole bunch of work. I was just really impressive. And I get to say that as somebody who had absolutely nothing to do with it and just get to observe it in the rearview mirror. So I think it's just remarkable and so impressive. So we get to talk to the board about that. We get to talk about the implications of the changes in Grad Plus loans and parent loans and professional and grad status and things like that, which we know will mean a lot to our students. It is a large focus of how we think about raising money in philanthropy, which is a large part of what I'm going to be doing, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. And we will be talking to the board about a break-even budget. So we don't have state money. We don't have an endowment that just pours extra money into the place. So we have to work our way to a break-even budget so we can continue to do our work. So those are the kinds of things that we're going to be talking to the board about. I just want to remind students that the Healthy Mind Survey closes December 8th. So hopefully you get that completed. There's a $250 gift card for every 250 students who complete it. For people like me, it's really important information to be able to look and see how our students are doing. So I appreciate people uh, filling that out. And then I had the pleasure of going to the Mingle and Jingle event, which was a group of community partners and philanthropy groups that help support particularly the Insight program, the Care Connection, the clinic, And the thing that struck me was just how much our community partners value the students and faculty of the university and enjoy working with us. So it really was there was just so much appreciation in the community for what our people do. I thought that was great to see and a lot of fun. I want to remind you, you can put questions into the Q&A, and we will do our best to get to as many of them as possible. So there's one, but I'm going to come to that after I do my little PowerPoint, and then we can sort of go from there. So let's see if I can successfully share my screen, which I did once before. So I was, whoops. I was asked by the Board of Trustees in my job talk this was the prompt. Please share your vision for RFU in 2031 after 5 years of leadership. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have to keep me that long, but that was the prompt. That was the question that they wanted me to ask. And so I thought I would Rosalind Franklin University's Innovation and Research Park enters the clinical trials with support from Helix 51, which is our innovation and entrepreneurship support group. Rosalind Franklin University clinical partners tell RFU to slow down. They have too many excellent RFU grads. I will come back to why I picked these in a bit. Harvard acknowledges copying Rosalind Franklin University's IPE program. Another headline, Rosalind Franklin University community-based health intervention adopted nationally. And then the last headline, Rosalind Franklin University students demonstrate splinting skills on Sousa after intramural basketball mishap. So just imagine in 5 years, these are the sorts of things that might show up, and I'll come back to why that might be of interest. But first, a little bit about where I come from. So I spent the last 30 years in Michigan, 25 at Michigan State University, 7 of the last 10 as dean of the MD school at Michigan State University. And in the upper left-hand corner of my pictures there, you can see the map of where Michigan State College of Human Medicine was in the state. The circles with the chevrons in them are our 8 campuses, and then the little dots are core clinical sites. There are 83 core clinical sites across the state that those students went to. Everyone above the thumb, and I don't know if you can see my pointer, but the ones above the thumb are all rural, which is about 20% of their students. And then we had our headquarters in Grand Rapids, and our largest research unit sort of was in Flint. The buildings that you see next to the map, those are 4 buildings that were built during my time in the Dean's Hallway. So the 180,000 square foot medical education building in the upper right, and then 3 research and public-private partnership groups. One of the faculty groups is this group right here, who have a new drug and a new company that are coming for Parkinson's. And then along the bottom here is our work in Flint. So Flint, of course, is a majority minority city, clearly post-Rust Belt. And we started a public health program there in 2012 with our first hire in 2014. And it was modeled on the settlement house model of Jane Addams, whose stamp you can see right down here at the bottom. Our faculty, including Mona Hanna, as well as a health geographer, were some of the people who sorted out scientifically what was going on and why the water had lead in it, and how much lead was getting into your kid based on where you were in the water system. So this is their American Journal of Public Health article. And then we built 2 buildings in Flint, about 80,000 square feet of research and education space. It expanded the number of medical students and public health students who were there. Our MPH program moved there. And then RX Kids is a cash allowance program in the first year of life. Dr. Hanna created that. It's given based on your residence, not on income or work. And it has been present for a little over a year and a half in Flint. It's now in the 5 eastern counties of the Upper Peninsula Detroit, much of Wayne County, Kalamazoo, Benton Harbor, and they're talking to folks nationally about it. It has dropped evictions in the first year of life to near zero, and increased the weight of babies, and increased maternal care, and decreased NICU admissions, all since it started compared to comparator cities. I think there's a fair amount of interest in Chicago for it to start. I want to make sure that it actually starts also in Lake County, particularly North Chicago and Waukegan. But this is the kind of work that I did. Much of it is community-based. Much of it is developing research and educational programs within the context of a geography. I also spent a lot of time as a medical educator. We created a curriculum that had 6 interprofessional rotations. We used progress testing, so we used a graduation 8-station OSCE for every student every semester. We had weekly half day of simulation, learning societies. Some of this is things that you will understand and recognize here. We had a longitudinal clinic experience in the first year, and then we started our rotations in the second year. The college in its strategic plan, their 2023 to 2030 plan, had a grand challenge. We also created something called the 1964 Project, which was I took 6 positions that I got as a part of my dean's package, and we used those to hire into health equity. So we had hired 3 when I left. We had also started an Indigenous pathway partnership with the tribal health colleges, or the tribal colleges in Michigan. It included $400,000 in scholarships, as well as mentorship, as well as a partnership with a tribal health clinic with a Little Traverse Bay Band of Ojibwa Indians, where students could get mentorship rotations, and we started a residency there. And then I spent time as executive dean with responsibility for the College of Human Medicine, which is the MD program where I was dean, and then also the osteopathic program and nursing. So I was struck as I was preparing and thinking about Rosalind Franklin with your mission to improve the wellness of all people through innovative interprofessional education of health and biomedical professionals and the discovery and implementation of new knowledge. Starting with that first phrase, right, to improve the wellness of all people, which speaks so much to what we're dealing with nationally and locally, and the importance of the health professions and developing, the next generation of people who will do the work, but also how we support our colleagues and our community partners and our neighbors. And I'll talk a little bit more about public intellectual work, but it is our job as providers and teachers and scientists to share what we know. And I think that there are opportunities for us to do that more at RFU. I read a lot of stuff. I did a lot of prep. You don't need to see all of that. And I had some approximations that I came to the board with in September. They're all still basically true in my head. The students are great. There are remarkable colleges, interprofessional culture, and education programs. RFU is deeply tied to and respects the community and is invested in discovery and in innovation. And there are some highly successful programs. We are tuition dependent, and we have to pay close attention to enrollment, and philanthropy is clearly much that we need to work on. It's how we will grow. And the ICC and those programs are so special, and I was sort of wondering, well, what does scale mean for that? And certainly as Medicaid and ACA funding gets cut, we're going to be seeing more people who need the kind of care that our students and faculty provide. And that partnerships are the way forward for RFU. I had a little question, which was, well, what's beyond Lake County? Because everything I read was Lake County. And then I found out all the places the podiatry students go, and the nurse anesthetists go, and medical students go, and all these folks. And I'm now thinking about RFU much more as a national institution, in the way that I thought previously about Michigan State as a statewide institution. There is national context to continue to consider, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. You all know this, but there are a lot of challenges in place, right, for science and health and sequela. They're all You all know these, so I'm not going to linger on them. But we do have to think about, how do And it is, of course, a time of great uncertainty. So training sites are tight across the country. There is a lot of technology in health. I understand that my internet is a little unstable, so let me know if something happens. And this is actually some of what we're going to be talking about, right? The generative AI is there to help students. If you think about having a minder or a coach or a tutor in your over one shoulder, and the incredible technology like point of care ultrasound, which looks so different than ultrasound did when I was a student, where it was just essentially a snowstorm. Now, of course, you have real opportunity to see what's going on. There are all kinds of questions about what Bayesian analysis can do in terms of diagnosing people. And of course, imaging processing and natural language processing are great opportunities. And then there is a lot of healthcare consolidation everywhere, and it is going to be complicated for all of us. So I think one of the things to say is like, what is my approach? How do I think about the world a little bit? And so I really will focus on maximizing our national, disciplinary, and international impact based on the daily business of running a university. So that means focusing on student success and faculty and staff success, our community engagement and partnerships, and then figuring out how we can maximize our impact. I tend to think about where we are in terms of, are we stable? Can we improve quality? And can we grow? Those are the sort of three questions I tend to ask when I'm looking at a project or a program. And then how can we take our local efforts in the daily business of being a university and create national importance? So that's a little bit like what happened in Flint. We had a program that was a fruit and vegetable prescription program. We had a clinic right next to the farmers market. Students could walk from their clinic with a prescription for fresh fruits and vegetables over to the farmers market and fill it. It then expanded to Meijer and grocery stores, and it entered the Farm Bill through the work of Senator Debbie Stabenow. So that's a local program and a local idea that was studied, found to work, and became a part of, the national policy world. That's the kind of work that I think we do that we can develop. So if you just take some examples, I'm not going to read through all these because it's way too many words, but if you take student success, right, just as an example, are there programs where we need attention on it and, educational or enrollment or accreditation, and are there graduation gaps that we need to be closing? So those are stability questions. How can we work on student faculty engagement to better support both students and faculty? And how do we leverage technology? And then where do we grow? What are some examples of how we can grow? And I know that Dean Chatterjee has been finding some, new clinical sites conceivably, which would allow CMS to grow. We would love to see our other programs grow as well. So in terms of faculty and staff success, you think about retention. And I know that we did a survey. So that's one of the questions. How do you figure out what's going on with that? How do you invest in things that, support our faculty and staff? And I think actually public intellectual work is one of those things. People enjoy talking about their work. And then in community engagement, so, I've been learning all about Vista here of late, but how do we deal with health consolidation and Medicaid cuts? And what are the goals of our partners? And how can we help and be useful without making our world too difficult? And that's true for the partnerships that we have, because we have to manage our clinical sites, but we have to make it good for our partners. They have to have something that comes out of this that feels useful to them. And then, I do think we have to grow with our partners. That was one of the great things about meeting with partners just this week, and I look forward to visiting our clinical partners as well. In my experience, if you can figure out how your goals align with your partner's goals, then when they meet their goals, you meet yours, and that provides an opportunity for you to grow. I think it's time for us to think about a grand challenge. So as I looked at the annual review, the annual report, there are 5 or 6 different areas of focus, but maybe we could pick one. And it doesn't have to be something that is mine, right? I think trust, equity, access, those are all possible things that could be a grand challenge. The Empathy Lab seems like a really remarkable and rare area of focus that might inspire people. And that then helps you focus what the work of faculty and staff and students on local policy or national implications. You might think about, I saw that the RFU chapter of street medicine is going to be out this weekend. There are lots of things like that where our students and faculty can engage. And I think having us all involved in national policy, both at the level of our disciplines, but also politically, is important. So we are a great intellectual institution. And then the question is, how do we engage really with the public? We could help develop the scientific safety net. That's what was working in Flint when residents essentially worked as resident scientists in collaboration with universities. So just a little bit more about the water crisis. The city didn't do its job, its scientific job. The state didn't do its scientific job. The feds did not do their scientific job. In that case, it was the residents and interestingly, Virginia Tech, which did the water engineering, and Michigan State, which did the epidemiology and health geography. How can we train people to be our scientific partners in the work that we do, right? And that some of that is as a community partner, but some of that is as a part of the scientific effort. How do we get nonpartisan engagement on health issues? Nobody wants disease, right? Nobody's plan is for hospitals to close. Nobody wants moms to die. So how do we engage people in those kinds of questions across the aisle? And much of this has to do with us explaining our work to the public and our students bringing their expertise to the nation. So just as a little break, because I am moving right along here, but that's me standing on Lake Michigan. And that's ice that blows into the eastern coast of the lake, which is just to say I'm not afraid of your winter. So in amongst these, I have a group of hypotheses to test, and I'll just say that I'm not actually, after the board meeting and into January, I have a few more ideas that we'll get a chance to talk about. So these are how do we think about our programmatic consistency with our mission? How do we think about acceptability of a new idea for faculty, staff, students, and partners? How will we finance it? How will it be implemented? Many of the projects I've done over my career have timelines of 5, 10, 15 years. And I can assure you my wife has not signed on for me to have this job for 15 years. So we have to think about how does the whole institution sign on to this kind of work. We can use donors. Philanthropy has been incredibly important in my career as a forcing function to get work done. We have to raise scholarships. It's really important for us to support our faculty and create programmatic funding. And then, of course, you need capital to do anything. And there are a group of things that we could do, but I do believe we should increase our discovery and scholarship. There are a number of ways to do that, but we are less exposed than some places, so we have some opportunity. We could lead and build by responding to national needs, and I think that's picking a challenge and partnering with community groups and then trying to lead that into policy and programming. And how do we build through our existing educational excellence? So some of that is AI and IPE and the work that we already do. I think that as financing of education becomes tighter, we have to focus more and more on students learning more faster. That is how we provide value to students, and that is how they get out and do their good work in the world. We already have we're going to hear more about this, but I've been impressed by the technology and the thoughts on innovation. And we can consider some reputation enhancing efforts like creating society awards or how we behave, how we participate in professional societies, thinking about a center based on a grand challenge, a longitudinal international program. I'm not saying that those are things that I'm going to pitch, but they are ideas that I presented. So how do we raise funds to make a degree more affordable? How do we think about our graduation certificates and whether or not how we engage larger parts of the economy in that? So health is now 20% of the economy. What does that mean for engineers and business people and communications people? And what can an institution like RFU do to engage those folks? How do we expand practice fields like the DMS program? And how do we build on technology? So that brings me back to the headlines. And why did I pick these? Why did I think this was important? And I think that expanding discovery consistent with our existing investments is particularly important. I think that there's no doubt that our expanding education has to meet the needs of our partners, right? That is, they have to see a downstream benefit to us using their clinical sites. I think that we can expand our national impact on education based on the great work that we do. And our community-based health interventions can become a national model. That is the kind of thing that we can do. And finally, I think that RFU's culture is amazing. So that was what I told the board. It is my goal to be that person. I know that this was not the most open process. So that's part of why I wanted to make sure that you all saw what I told the board or suggested to the board that I would do. And I'm pretty sure there are some questions, so I'm going to go to those. So from Anonymous, with the change in start date, how when should support staff take vacation? Previously, July was the best time to take off, but with the requirements for the heavy support, we are suddenly nearly year-round. And, you know, I suspect for every program, at least in my experience, every program has its tight point. It's true that, you know, maybe we don't quite know where that tight point is now to the extent that we did before. But I think that's what you talk to the people that you work with about. So for some programs, it's going to change, but I can't tell you a particular time that, you know, vacation will be best. I think that's going to depend on your program. And then from Martin, despite not having a single primary care teaching hospital, CMS is blessed to have multiple good clinical affiliates for their students to do rotations. Having said that, I sense some instability in this regard, relying on Mercy Rockford for some family medicine, closure of Weiss, cuts for students at other sites. We do have a very big class at CMS. We need to get through clinical rotations. Dr. Allsweet and other deans are doing their best, and the kudos to them. But what is the university at large doing to support the genuine challenge for clinical sites? And I have to say that I'm going to go start visiting, right? I know that, you know, we have a financial contribution that we're providing, which other schools do not necessarily do, depending on who they are. That is not a solution for us. But however, we do need to think about what those relationships are, how we help them academically, what that means for their folks to be our faculty, and how our students engage with them. There are lots of models for this, but often it is relationships that make this work. So I know the deans and Dr. Allsweet are going out to do this kind of work. That is incredibly important. I'm going to go start visiting. I will not get in between the deans and their clinical sites, but I will be there to support folks because those relationships are really important. From Anonymous, given the electricity and water requirements of generative AI computing, how do we justify the use of AI from a sustainability perspective? Well, that is an interesting question. The corollary is, of course, what will happen to us if we don't engage, right? So I'm pretty sure that there won't be a way for a physician to practice without engaging AI. I just know medicine, not necessarily the other fields, but I think it'll actually, especially things like ambient scribing, have the potential to make the physician-patient relationship better and repair what the computer has done to our ability to look somebody in the eye and have a real conversation. There are surely costs, right? And one of those is energy, and water and all the things that you just mentioned, rare earth mining, things like that go into this. But I think that just like computers are here to stay, the opportunities for AI are things that we have to engage with. And maybe we have to figure out individually and maybe as an institution what we can do to be sustainable. I've had some conversations actually about sustainable energy, and the engineering folks actually have some really fascinating ideas. we'll see if any of those we can actually make those pencil. But that's a fascinating question. From Connor, hello, welcome to RFU. Thank you for fielding questions like this. I'm a CMS M3 and wanted to ask about your thoughts and plans for maintaining affordability for all programs, especially including CMS. Our tuition is one of the highest out of any MD program in Illinois by a significant amount. With housing affordability crisis, stagnant physician wages, limiting of government loans, and a lack of available scholarships through the university, what are your plans for either maintaining or increasing the value of an RFU education or for the cost based on tax filings? I understand that our costs outpace our revenue. Last year, would you consider raising tuition to make up for this or find other revenue streams? So the other revenue streams, right, are generally a partnership with a clinical entity and philanthropy. So I will be spending a lot of time on philanthropy. Scholarships are a key way for us to try to control what students experience in terms of the cost. We're also looking at we're having conversations with non-traditional lenders, about non-traditional lenders and with a non-traditional lender to see whether or not there are other ways we can address the loan crisis. But there's no doubt it's expensive. And my previous institution was a top 10 offender for debt and expense. And some of that is that when you follow your mission and try to provide opportunity to people who don't otherwise have it, you're creating, if we just admitted people who had great parental wealth, we would have no debt problem. But that's not who we want to be. So we have to think a little bit about how we can raise more money. Increasing tuition is not something we want to do, but we are tuition dependent and we have to pay people and we have to keep the lights on and things like that. So we have to look at all of those revenue pieces, but there's no doubt that we have to grow our philanthropic component as a way to expand our research and expand scholarships. From Michael Rosen, what was your interaction with life science industry at MSU regarding research, collaborations, technology licensing, commercialization, and other programs? So we had an incubator with about, 12 startups, and then we had a whole group of partnerships, particularly around imaging, because we had a lot of imaging scientists. So Siemens and GE and General United were some of the biggest. Then we had a range of pharmaceutical relationships depending on who was doing what. And we had a bunch of P3s. So those were some of which were actually with nonprofits. So it was an interesting set of programs. I'm really interested in what we can do. From Anonymous, thank you so much for your transparency. If you're comfortable, can you share your vision for supporting students, faculty, and staff with marginalized identities as we continue to learn and grow and support our communities? Well, so we're here for each other, right? And so I think we have to find the best ways possible to support each other and treat each other as neighbors and as colleagues. I think that we can do a remarkable amount in terms of programming as long as we understand, right, that it's open to all and we engage all people. So I think there are a lot of things that we can do to support each other. Rosen asks, add to that life science startups and entrepreneurship. We actually had an entrepreneurship program for students. That's one of the things that I would like to develop here. We also had an entrepreneurship program for faculty. But that all depends on finding the funding to do those kinds of things and support for that. From Anonymous, welcome to RFU. Given the funding situation at NIH and other agencies, how does the university plan to strategically support securing stable funding for bench science? Are there initiatives underway to expand internal seed funding or strengthening grant writing infrastructure? So I don't know very much about those yet. That's one of the things that I get to find out about. Joe DiMario and I have been talking about, obviously Joe is retiring. We're going to do a national search for the next EVPR. I've been talking to people about a process around an interim. And I think that that's when a lot of the strategic work will be happening in the future, is looking at what we're doing and not doing and what we can do more of. Is there any chance some of these town halls could be in person instead of Zoom? Well, that's an interesting question. So odds are I'm happy to have in-person meetings, but these are probably going to be on Zoom. We have people all over the country. And I want to make sure that if people all over the country want to participate, they can. Also, it's lower stakes to ask a question anonymously over Zoom than in a room where you're raising your hand in front of everybody. So I'm happy, as Anonymous may recognize, having asked that question. So I'm happy to have in-person sessions of some sort, but these will be online. All right, so you can put more questions in as you think of them, but I'm going to turn over to Dr. Carlson, our interim provost, who's going to talk a little bit about AI. Put your questions in the QA. I want to make sure we get to Joe and Andrew. So, but Jim, the screen is yours.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna share real quickly. Can you see that all right?
We can.
All right, excellent. So thank you. And again, welcome to Joe and Andrew, who are also involved in some of the work we're going to talk about today. I'm just going to do a couple of quick slides in terms of some background about AI and the full deck. This kind of comes from a full deck from a Faculty Nexus presentation back in September, which I believe was recorded. So if you want to drill in deeper, I believe you can find that on Insight. But I thought the goals for our conversation today around AI would be, how is AI impacting healthcare today? Just a quick look at that. How is AI impacting education then? Like, so what are we doing about it? Right? What are student perspectives around the use of AI? So we'll kind of let Joe and Andrew drill into that a bit. And then what is the future of AI in healthcare and health professions education, which is exciting but uncertain, right? So and a great place to be, I think, at least exploring. All right, so just some of these images, why did I put these together in a slide? Just to get us thinking a little bit. So up here where you can see my cursor, we all learned about the Industrial Revolution, the different revolutions in terms of progress in our history. We kind of live in this area right now between, most of us, computers have really evolved in our lifetime to the point we carry them around in our pockets, right? And then the fourth one we're kind of in right now is like intelligence, right? So what are those devices able to do with the information on them? And I put a couple things on here that helps put in perspective if you're maybe less familiar with AI, or what's the difference between a computer and like generative AI or things. So remember this little thing down here, this phone that you may have had in your car, right? You were making calls on it, right? Now that thing again lives in your pocket and holds all sorts of information, and can help you make decisions very quickly, right? Some of you who worked in clinical settings or have been a patient might recognize these things. So those are patient records. You turn the little crank there to get through all of them. Now they're digitized, right? Everything's kind of digitized. And again, you could pull it up on your phone, right? But that digitization is extremely important to how AI works, right? Now all that data is at our fingertips, right? Anybody remember Blockbuster? Right? Blockbuster, there's one left somewhere in Oregon, I believe. It's more of a historical piece than anything, but they tried to sell their business to Netflix in 2000, I believe, for about $50 million. Blockbuster doesn't really exist anymore, but Netflix is now worth $440 billion. Why? They figured out how to digitize all of that stuff we love to consume and get it out there in our hands. I put that on there because one, the digitization, but two, right? If you learn to use that digitization, you kind of can, what happens to companies, what happens to organizations that really embrace that, right? And then on the right here, when we talk about digitization, all the things that we are using this information for, right? Portable devices, you have smartwatches that are collecting your health data. We know this, right? So there's lots of ways we are kind of bridging right now from collecting through devices, but providing the information for decision-making to be made through artificial intelligence. Right. So how is it kind of happening today? I won't get through too much, but I think there's three big areas, at least I think about, and that's patient access to care and information. So as a patient, patients come in more knowledgeable. We can become more knowledgeable using chatbots, right? So Hippocratic AI is a virtual nurse, right? You can ask some questions, right? Woebot is a chat app that you can get on your phone for behavioral health, right? Healthy or not, maybe it's not good to be too dependent on an AI companion, but at times, maybe that's what you need, right? And there's been some significant work in looking at how these chatbots can help with anxiety or depression, that sort of thing. Other ways to do symptom checkers out there. So where maybe like 10 years ago when you walked in, and you can be honest with yourself if you've done it, have you Googled your diagnosis, right? You probably Googled your symptoms and where what you have. Well, 10, 15 years ago, maybe that was 58% accurate, meaning what you Googled was in that list, right? That was returned to you. Your diagnosis was there. Now it's much more likely to be there through these chatbots. But what does that mean? Patients are coming in far more knowledgeable about what they may have, right? Again, digitization leading to how we can collect different physical exam and whatnot. And then we talked previously or was mentioned previously about ambient scribing. So this ability to take a device, like a HIPAA compliant phone or tablet or computer, and record the conversation, right? And that conversation then can help us transcribe, right? And then turn that into a note. That's ambient scribing. Some of you may have experienced it. This is probably one of the most widespread adoptions in healthcare right now. Okay. And that's what we're going to focus on a little bit because that's where we spent some time that will be important to this discussion. So capturing the conversation, accurately recording it. And what does that help? We know there's a lot of burnout. Why is that burnout there? One reason, how much time you spend in your pajamas, pajama time writing note after the day is done, right? And we're trying to reduce those things. Okay. So we're going to talk about that ambient scribing project in just a second with Joseph and Andrew, but just a few things for the community to know if you're not aware. So 2024, we had a task force in AI in education and kind of try to define it. So our definition is here if you want to take a look at it. And then we didn't really politicize anything at this point in time, but that's coming now that we've learned, I think, a bit more. We're working on how we wrap our heads around how do we put some structure. The strategic plan, which is again, an element that looks at AI across research and patient care and education, is actively collecting data on the community and what we are doing. And that probably could be a great topic for a future town hall on what we're learning about how our community is using it. And then in case you weren't aware, there's a research page on Insight that was launched in October that gives you sort of, here are some approved tools that kind of meet the ethical and copyright and FERPA related guidelines that we would like to use. And as a reminder too, the Nexus has got many different areas here that you can drill into based on prior training that has been done. All right. So I wanted to jump ahead and talk about one project while we have Joseph and Andrew here. And Andrew here is we have been working actively with our friends at Leap of Faith Technologies here in Libertyville, Illinois, and a set of interns with the Illinois Institute of Technology to develop our own educational version of ambient scribing, right? So a device that can listen, help students learn how to write a note and use ambient scribing, right? But also provide feedback on their accuracy and their decision making with their assessment and plan. So we did sort of a small study where we just are deploying this in our sim labs right now. And we had Joseph and Andrew who oversee a student interest group interested in AI in healthcare education and healthcare in general, and come in and practice with it. And basically what we have them do, go in, see a case, document the note that they would write, and then, and get that feedback from AI and how they're using it. And by and large measure, the outcomes of that were it generally accurately documented what happened, but then provided them insight as self-reported that, hey, I kind of knew what to do, but then it enlightened me to some other things as a student I didn't know what to do. So it started teaching a little bit is what we're kind of starting to see with that. So basically a student walks into a room, they turn it on and they generate their note. So I wanted to sort of ask for Joseph and Andrew's perspectives here and maybe tee up and just let either one of you answer. But first question I'd have, right, is maybe to tell us about your interest in AI in terms of your learning. And you approached, I think, Dr. Allsweet and I about doing this. What prompted you to do that?
Okay. I can get us started and tell you why, we formed an AI interest group in the first place. This was last year, me and Andrew, we were thinking ahead for our clerkships. And I'm friends with a few physicians, and I became aware that physicians were using like these AI transcriber devices like a Plod or Pocket, and that they were actually using them in their private practice. And I started thinking, well, we're going to be going to these clerkship sites, and at these clerkship sites are going to be physicians and residents who have these AI transcriber devices, and we're going to be expected how to use them. And we won't have that knowledge. And so that's when we approached Dr. Alswed and then you about potentially integrating AI into the curriculum. And then we found out so many more people were interested in it. And that's how we started, and that's where we're going.
Andrew, anything to add?
Honestly, Joe and I's brain kind of meshed on this. So he said it pretty well. I mean, I'm interested in like PMR and like orthopedics where clinical interviewing is huge. And after scribing, shadowing a few different docs, seeing how like you could have an AI device write a note, not entirely for you, but help you get there a lot faster. For me, that's very attractive going into things, potentially leaving residency 7 years from now.
You know,
Yeah.
the experience of being a physician in a EHR over the last 15 or 20 years has been pretty dreadful. Not much better for the patients. And so I think everybody is, concerned about questions like privacy and things like that. But it's been so expensive and so dreadful to meet the billing and other documentation needs in a clinic visit that it's really gotten in the way of a patient-physician or patient-healthcare provider relationship. And I think that a lot of people feel like this is an opportunity for computers to actually make it up to us.
For sure. Yeah, I think I think the same thing holds true, when you look at, many professions, right? The way they are engaging it, patients are themselves getting overwhelmed, as you mentioned. And so I guess we had Joseph and Andrew, we had you go into the sim lab and actually use an ambient scriber at the bedside with a simulated patient, right? And then explore what came out of it after you were done, right? What was your experience like? What did you learn from it? Was it helpful?
Yeah, I mean, it was fascinating the first time seeing it. I went through my whole visit, as a M2, we're practicing that all the time. I just had my OSCE and so I went through the whole thing, and then when I looked at the note, the HPI was perfect. It was just, the thing that I've been dreading writing the whole time. It was perfect. First liner perfect, all the old carts in there. I think where it struggled a little bit more was more so like the physical exam, and the review of systems, which in time I think will get better. But I was surprised with the ability to, take a conversation, interpret the conversation, and distill out all of the important elements. I mean, you know, today that could be useful to just so many people. If you could just do that one thing well, it would already improve things a lot, and it's only going to get better.
So, Andrew and Joseph, I got a question for you. What are your
Mhm.
colleagues talking about in terms of AI? Like, there's all kinds of scuttlebutt in the world about what AI will do to healthcare providers, and we're watching what's happening to paralegals and coders and things like that. So, like, when you guys are at lunch or wherever, what are people talking about?
I some people they don't know a whole lot about it, so it's kind of a hand wavy. Some people they're kind of in the negative skepticism realm of like I'm kind of worried where this might lead medicine. Like, is it going to take over how we think about medicine? Others, though, I think they look at it as a great potential like augmenter, where you're just going to be enhanced by it. Like it's going to help you get things done a little faster. You'll spend more time actually talking to the patients. Um, it's kind of at a point where there's just a whole lot of different things flowing around where I can't see everyone's thinking one thing, but definitely those three categories have kind of parsed out.
Also, I've seen students, I think a sentiment that I hear a lot is like, I'm trying to use AI as much as possible in order to assist me. Whether it be through learning. I know a lot of students recently, Google let all students for a year to use their AI for free. And so a lot of students are using like Notebook LM to help them out making quizzes for their tests, just in that stuff. We have people using, AI assistants for note taking in their Zoom meetings. People are using it quite a lot.
Mhm.
One of the things I do want to mention, because I'm interested in pathology, going into pathology, and when I have a mentor who's a pathologist, and when I spoke to him about AI, he was like, you know, pathologists are actually very interested, and for the longest time, I mean, it's been about 20 years now, where a limited form of AI has been used in cytology for pap smears.
And blood counts.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And so for 20 years, pathologists have been using AI, and they see the improvement of AI you know, not as a fear, but more so, how is that going to augment the pathologist to do more things? Instead of focusing on the slide, are you focusing on, say, the genetics of the patient and this and that? So I feel like AI is going to, free up things and allow humans to look at different aspects instead of focusing on the labor and the work aspect of it.
So that's a really good point, Joseph. EKGs have had a computer read for a long, long time. That's how you can have an automatic defibrillator, that you can put on a wall. Is that and it's not AI in the generative sense, right? When you ask a chat bot to write something, or it communicates with you, that generative AI is different than the machine learning that's been used for a long, long time to read pap smears and CBCs and EKGs and things like that. Although expanding the general AI capacity does make it possible to think about broader uses. So if you think about CT PET scans or MRI, even worse, MRI PET scans that can have, 1,000 images that come out of them, there's no way a human radiologist can do a good job with 1,000 images. And that doesn't even count the fact that every CT scan is averaged across some amount. Could be a centimeter, could be half a centimeter, depending on the image. And with better computer imaging technology, it's actually possible for the computer to recut all of those and find things that you're missing in the other imaging averaging. So there's actually exciting stuff that can come out. And we have just a few minutes left. There is a question from Carl Correll who asks, how can AI be truly compliant with patient privacy? What do you guys think?
I'm not a computer specialist by any means, but I feel like this could be a more complicated computer engineering thing and how you structure guardrails with technology breaches, things like that.
I have a slightly flippant answer in that people are not compliant with patient privacy. But the more serious one, right? Because the real thing that computerization allows is that people can spread information much faster, much farther than people can at the water cooler. So that part is very real. But in a lot of ways, that's already happened, right? So AI is just another form of the computerization that has already happened to all of our medical records. And so we have to build systems to try to keep our information as private or controlled as possible. And HIPAA doesn't keep you from isn't about privacy. It's just about how it electronically gets spread around. So yeah, it is a big issue.
Yeah,
And
and
you were going to say something there.
the ambient scribers too, in terms of what we were just talking about with that, the transcript it evaporates. The notes what's left, right? Just like and then put into the medical record, but the transcript eventually evaporates and it's gone. Like once you're done with it, so that full conversation only gets captured in the note, as has always been done.
I think that people wonder, right? Well,
Well,
who says it evaporated, right?
right,
Just
for
like
sure.
we assumed, right, that when I
Yeah.
would dictate a note and it would get transcribed in Ireland overnight, that the people in Ireland, weren't sending the file off somewhere else, right? Like there's a whole, when they would email it back to us, that they weren't emailing it to other places. There's a whole piece there where we just can't quite see into the black box.
Right. And in addition to that, well, it does evaporate the pattern is learning, though. It is learning, though,
Yeah.
from that information, right? And so that doesn't evaporate. So that's why I think, when we use this with patients, the responsible use, and we talked about this with the students, is to inform the patient, here's what this is, here's what I'm doing with it, and here's what that means, to get consent, essentially. Yeah.
So I actually had a conversation with my parents, my wife, my son. I did 250 town halls in Michigan. So anybody who's scraping the web for my face and my voice has 250 hours to train, and then use that to call anybody that they want, right? So there's no doubt you can think that it's private and they're not supposed to do it, but it is a worry for all of us, a genuine worry. So we have some other questions that I want to get to as we head to the top of the hour. Some of them I'm going to struggle with a little bit. How do you envision partnerships with major pharmaceutical companies like Abbott and AbbVie aligning with our medical schools' long-term strategic goals for research, innovation, and community impact? And I think there are two main ways. One is faculty partnerships are wonderful, right? Especially around IP and the opportunity to develop IP. That is something we should be leaning into as much as we can. Then there are the more complicated ones where, there's a real collaboration between a company and a university, and those have been fraught, interesting, and I think I'm game for the conversation. But I recognize what's happened out at Stanford and other places like that when it didn't turn out the way the university wanted. So we just have to have our eyes open. But I'm game for the concept of partnership to help us grow and provide more opportunities for our staff, our students, and our faculty. Are there any plans to update our current classrooms to be more hybrid friendly since we have such a mobile student population and workforce? I don't know the answer to that. I'm actually not a friend of hybrid, so I like either one or the other, but I'm not gonna micromanage that. Carl asked about AI. I think we worked on that one. Welcome to RFUMS. Thank you for your transparency. How do you envision supporting and uplifting staff as a whole? In what ways might you help motivate our team, especially given the university's strong focus on faculty and student needs? The staff are the ones who carry the place, right? That is actually how the work gets done. And I will do everything I can to show up for staff, and I do recognize just how important staff are to the work that we do and the impact that we have. Also, that staff have remarkable skills. One of the coolest things that happened during my time at my previous place was staff actually developing their own public intellectual work, and community engagement. And because we are all members of the community, you don't have to be a student or a faculty member for your community partnership to be meaningful to the university. So anyway, I hope that there are opportunities. And then from Chelsea, if ambient scribing becomes a part of the standard assistant for working with patients, will education on proofreading and editing what AI provides become part of the future studies? That is so important, right? Because it's not like anybody was proofreading the checklist that came out of the current noting systems. The number of cardiologists notes that talk about a breast exam is a sign that maybe, people were not proofreading so well. So, yeah, that's a big deal. So we are up at the top of the hour. I want to thank Joseph Kanoff, Andrew Schaub, and James Carlson. Jim, thank you for being with us. Thank you, Jonna, for helping set this up. Thanks to all of you for joining us today. Thank you for all you do to support our staff, our faculty, and our students. It is the work of people like you that make the university such a special place to be. It is Friday. I hope you get to have a weekend. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.